My girlfriend's single friends persuaded her to stage a fake breakup test on me to make me more committed. But it completely backfired when I decided to end our relationship instead. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit! Buckle up because this is a wild ride that took place over 2 years, and I'm still processing how insane it all got. I've been lurking here forever, but never had drama worth posting until now. Using a throwaway because some people involved know my main account. And honestly, I don't want the drama if they find this. But this story is too crazy not to share. Background. I 29 male and my ex Qley, 26 female, dated 3.5 years, lived together the last 8 months. I work in commercial real estate. Started as an agent, now run my own brokerage. She worked in marketing coordination, making about $38,000. Here's important context. I grew up poor, like trailer park in rural Oklahoma poor. First person in my family to graduate college, let alone make decent money. My family sees me as their personal ATM, and my ex's family had money, which made my relatives even more invested in keeping her around. Anyway, here's how everything went down. So I'm 29 and work in commercial real estate. Started as an agent right out of college, making basically nothing. But I'm good with people and understand numbers, so I worked my way up. By the time this story starts, I was making around $127,000 annually. Not crazy money, but pretty good for someone who grew up eating government cheese. Qley and I had been together 3.5 years. She worked as a marketing coordinator, making about $38,000. We'd been living together 8 months in this decent 2-bedroom apartment that ran us $1,450 monthly. Since I made more, I covered about 65% of our shared expenses, which seemed fair. Important background about my family, because it's relevant later. My parents, Linda and Mike, still live in that same trailer park where I grew up. Mom cleans houses for a living. Dad does odd jobs when he feels like it. My sister Brittany never finished high school, has 3 kids with different fathers, and basically expects me to solve all her financial problems. When I started making decent money, my family's attitude completely changed. Suddenly, I was their favorite son brother, but only when they needed something. Every conversation eventually turned into hints about helping family more, or how I was forgetting where I came from. They'd call with sob stories about broken appliances, overdue bills, or how little Aiden needed new school clothes. It was exhausting being treated like a human ATM with legs. When I started dating Qley, they loved her immediately, not because she was good for me, but because her parents own a successful dental practice. My family was already planning how they could benefit from that connection. They'd make gross comments about how I'd landed a rich girl and better lock that down quick before she figured out she could do better. My mom would literally ask me when I was bringing Qley around again because she wanted to get to know her family better. Translation: she wanted to network her way into their social circle. Qley and I had a good thing going, or so I thought. We had our routines. I'd wake up early and have coffee ready when she got up for work. We'd meal prep together on Sundays. And we had this comfortable rhythm where we could exist together without drama. She'd watch her reality TV shows while I read real estate market reports, and we'd both be perfectly content. We'd have these lazy Saturday mornings where we'd stay in bed until noon, order takeout, and just talk about random stuff. It felt stable and mature. What I didn't know was that Qley had been complaining to her friend group about how predictable our relationship had become. Her friends were Amber, Tessa, and Morgan, 3 single women who seemed to have a new dating disaster story every week. These were the type of women who'd spend entire brunch conversations analyzing whether some guy texting back in 2 hours instead of 1 meant he was losing interest. Amber had just gotten out of a 2-year relationship where the guy had been seeing someone else for the last 6 months. She'd found out through Instagram when the other woman posted a photo wearing Amber's boyfriend's college sweatshirt. Tessa was going through this messy divorce where her ex-husband had cleaned out their savings account and disappeared to another state with his secretary. Morgan couldn't seem to keep a relationship going longer than a few months because she had this pattern of getting bored and sabotaging things whenever guys got too comfortable. These 3 were bitter about their love lives, and apparently couldn't stand watching Qley be happy and stable while they dealt with chaos. So they started filling her head with ideas about how I was getting too comfortable and how she needed to create some excitement to keep me interested. They'd have these girls' nights where they'd analyze every aspect of our relationship like they were relationship experts instead of serial dating failures. Looking back, there were probably signs I missed, Chloe had started making little comments about how our weekends had become routine, or asking if I ever missed the excitement of being single. She'd see couples fighting in restaurants and make weird comments like, at least they're passionate, or, I wonder what it's like to have that kind of intensity. At the time, I thought she was just having normal relationship thoughts. You know, those moments where everyone wonders about the path not taken. But apparently, her friends were telling her that comfortable relationships are relationship death and that men need to be reminded of what they could lose in order to appreciate what they have. They convinced her that I was taking her for granted and that she needed to shake things up if she wanted me to step up and propose. They'd fill her head with stories about friends who'd used jealousy and uncertainty to get their boyfriends to propose, like it was some kind of proven strategy. The crazy part is that I wasn't even dragging my feet on commitment. If she'd just talked to me about wanting to get engaged, we probably could have had that conversation within a reasonable time frame. Instead, her friends convinced her that manipulation was the better strategy. They actually made her believe that honest communication was for weak women who didn't understand male psychology. About 2 months before everything exploded, Chloe started acting different. Not suspicious different, but like she was having some kind of quarter-life crisis about our relationship. It started small. She'd make random comments about feeling like she was missing out on her 20s by being in such a serious relationship. She'd see her single friends going out and posting photos from bars and concerts, and she'd get this wistful look like she was watching someone else live the life she wanted. She started following all these Instagram accounts about living your best life and embracing your independence. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed about work. Her company had been going through some restructuring, and people were worried about layoffs. So I tried to be supportive, told her that if she lost her job, we could cut back on expenses, maybe move somewhere cheaper until she found something new. Basic boyfriend support stuff. I even offered to help her update her resume and reach out to my professional contacts if she wanted to explore other opportunities. But then the comments got more pointed. She started saying things like, I wonder what it would be like to be on my own again, or sometimes I feel like I settled down too young. This was confusing because she'd been the one pushing for us to move in together in the first place. She'd been the one talking about our future and making Pinterest boards for home decorating ideas. The conversation started getting heavier. She'd bring up how her friends were out there experiencing life while she was playing house with me. She'd mention articles she'd read about people who got married young and ended up regretting it later. She started talking about wanting to travel alone, maybe backpack through Europe, to find herself. She'd send me these articles about quarter-life crises and ask if I ever worried we were missing out on important life experiences. This went on for about 2 weeks, with her getting more and more agitated about our supposedly boring life together. She'd pick fights about stupid stuff, like how we always went to the same grocery store or how predictable our date nights had become. She complained that we never did anything spontaneous anymore, even though every time I suggested something random, she'd have an excuse about being tired or having plans with her friends. Then one evening, she hit me with the big conversation. We were sitting on our couch after dinner, the same couch we'd picked out together at a furniture store about 6 months earlier, and she started crying. Real tears, not the fake stuff. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for such a serious relationship. She laid out this whole speech about how she loved me, but felt like she was losing herself in our relationship. How she'd gone straight from living with college roommates to living with me, and had never really experienced being independent. She said her friends had been pointing out that she was only 26, and maybe she was rushing into adult life too fast. She talked about how she felt like she was becoming too domestic and losing her sense of adventure. Then came the knockout punch. She wanted us to take a break. Not a breakup, she was careful to specify, but a break. A month-long separation where we wouldn't see each other, wouldn't talk except for necessary stuff about the apartment and bills. She said she needed time to think about whether this relationship was really what she wanted, or if she was just staying because it was comfortable and familiar. She had it all planned out. She'd looked into getting her own studio apartment, and she thought this break would be good for both of us to gain some perspective. She said that if we were really meant to be together, a month apart would just make us more sure of that. And if we weren't, better to figure that out now before we got even more serious. She even had this whole speech about how taking breaks was mature and showed we were committed to making the right choices. The way she presented it was so reasonable and mature sounding that I found myself nodding along even though every word was like a knife in my chest. She talked about how much she loved me and how this wasn't about wanting to see other people. It was about personal growth and making sure we were choosing each other for the right reasons. She kept emphasizing that this was temporary and that she just needed space to reconnect with herself. I was devastated but tried to be understanding. I told her that if she needed space to figure things out, I'd respect that. I even offered to be the one to find temporary housing, since she'd probably have an easier time finding a roommate to help with rent if she needed to. I was trying so hard to be the supportive boyfriend that I completely missed how calculated the whole thing was. Looking back, I should have seen through it. Qley had never been the type to have these deep philosophical thoughts about life choices. She was practical and straightforward, the kind of person who made decisions and stuck with them. But when someone you love is crying and telling you they're confused about their feelings, you want to believe them and help them work through it. The next 3 weeks were absolutely brutal. I moved into my friend Jake's spare bedroom, paying him $650 for the month. Meanwhile, I was still covering my portion of rent at the apartment Qley and I shared, because I didn't want to leave her in a financial bind while she was supposedly figuring out her life. Jake was a good friend about the whole situation, but I could tell he thought I was being played. He'd make these subtle comments about how convenient it was that Qley needed space right when her lease was up for renewal, or how weird it was that someone having an identity crisis would be so active on social media. But I wasn't ready to hear it yet. My family's reaction was predictably awful. When I told my mom that Qley and I were taking a break, she immediately panicked about losing her connection to Qley's wealthy family. She actually said, "You better fix this situation fast before she finds someone with more money. Thanks for the emotional support, Mom." She then launched into this lecture about how I needed to fight for my woman and not let her slip away because of my pride. My dad's advice was to buy Qley expensive gifts to win her back. Flowers, jewelry, maybe a weekend trip somewhere nice. He kept saying that women need to be reminded of what they have, and that I should be fighting harder to keep her. He suggested I show up at her work with roses or write her love letters. My sister Brittany was more direct. She asked if this meant I wouldn't be able to help her with car payments anymore, and then suggested I should propose immediately to lock Qley down. None of them cared about how I was feeling, or whether this situation was healthy for me. They were just worried about their access to Qley's family connections and what this might mean for their ability to benefit from my relationship. When I tried to explain that maybe some space was good for us to evaluate our relationship, they looked at me like I was insane. Work became a nightmare. I'm usually pretty focused when dealing with clients or analyzing property deals, but I kept making stupid mistakes and missing important details. My concentration was shot. I'd be in the middle of showing a property to potential tenants, and my mind would wander to wondering what Qley was doing at that exact moment. I missed 2 important client calls because I was staring at my phone waiting for her to text me back. My boss pulled me aside after I messed up some paperwork on a major lease deal and asked if everything was okay at home. I had to admit I was going through relationship problems, which was embarrassing. In commercial real estate, you need to project confidence and stability. Clients don't want to work with someone whose personal life is falling apart. He was understanding but told me I needed to get my head back in the game before it affected my reputation. Meanwhile, Qley seemed to be thriving during this supposedly difficult soul-searching period. Her social media was full of photos of her out with her friends, trying new restaurants, going to art galleries and concerts. She looked happy and carefree while I was barely holding it together. She'd post these perfectly curated photos that made her life look like some kind of adventure documentary. She'd post these pictures with captions about rediscovering myself and embracing independence. Photos of her laughing with Amber, Tessa, and Morgan at some trendy brunch place I'd never heard of. Pictures of her at a pottery class or a yoga session in the park. She was living it up like someone who'd just been freed from prison. The contrast between her apparent happiness and my misery was devastating. The psychological warfare was the worst part. Every few days, she'd text me these carefully crafted messages designed to keep me hooked but confused. She'd send things like, "I miss the way you make coffee in the morning," followed by, "But I'm really enjoying having my own space to think." The mixed signals were calculated to keep me off balance and hoping. Or she'd text, "I've been thinking about our trip to Colorado last year," and then post a photo of herself hiking with her friends the next day, looking like she didn't have a care in the world. She'd share memories of our good times and then immediately do something that suggested she was moving on without me. The psychological whiplash was driving me insane. I started losing weight because I had no appetite. Food tasted like cardboard, and I kept forgetting to eat meals. I probably lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. Jake was getting worried about me because I'd just sit in his living room staring at my phone, waiting for Qley to text me back. He started bringing me food and making sure I ate at least one real meal a day. I'd check her Instagram and Facebook constantly, analyzing every photo and caption for clues about her emotional state. When she posted a picture of herself laughing at some restaurant, I'd spend hours wondering if she was happier without me. When she shared some quote about independence and self-discovery, I'd interpret it as confirmation that she was planning to end things permanently. I became obsessed with reading into every detail of her posts. The rational part of my brain knew that if someone really needed space for deep personal reflection, they probably wouldn't be constantly posting on social media and going out to social events. But when you're in love with someone and they've convinced you they're going through an emotional crisis, you want to believe that their behavior makes sense somehow. I kept making excuses for the inconsistencies. After 3 weeks of this torture, I was starting to accept that our relationship was probably over. I was still heartbroken, but I was trying to make peace with the situation and figure out how to rebuild my life without Qley. I'd even started looking at apartment listings for when my month at Jake's was up. Then everything changed completely. What I found out later was that there had been a major falling out between Qley and her friend group. Apparently, Morgan had been getting jealous of all the attention Qley was receiving during this crisis, and had started making comments about how Qley was being dramatic and stringing me along too long. She felt like Qley was getting all the benefits of sympathy and support, while Morgan's own dating disasters were being ignored. This led to a huge fight between them, where Morgan accused Qley of enjoying the manipulation too much, and Qley accused Morgan of being jealous that their plan was working so well. Morgan apparently said something about how Qley was turning into a psychopath who enjoyed watching me suffer. Tessa tried to play peacemaker, but ended up taking Morgan's side when Qley got defensive and started screaming at both of them. The whole thing culminated in Amber feeling terrible about what they'd done to me. She'd apparently been having second thoughts about the manipulation for weeks, especially as she watched me become more obviously distressed. She'd seen me at the grocery store looking like I'd been hit by a truck, and it had made her feel sick with guilt. When the friend group imploded over their disagreement about how long to continue the charade, Amber decided she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. She called me on a Saturday night around 11 p.m., sounding like she'd been crying for hours. Her voice was shaky, and she kept apologizing before she even told me what for. She said she needed to tell me something important about Qley, that I deserved to know, and that she couldn't sleep at night knowing what they'd done to me. My heart immediately started racing because I thought maybe something bad had happened. Maybe Qley was hurt, or sick, or in some kind of trouble. I asked Amber what was wrong, and that's when she completely destroyed my world. She confessed that the entire breakup crisis was fake, completely fabricated, orchestrated. The words came spilling out of her like she couldn't get them out fast enough. Qley's friend group had convinced her that the best way to get me to move toward engagement was to make me think I might lose her. They'd coached her on what to say, how to act, what kind of social media posts would make me more desperate for commitment. They'd literally scripted parts of our conversations and planned out her social media strategy like it was a marketing campaign. According to Amber, they'd been planning this relationship intervention for months after Qley complained that our relationship felt too comfortable and predictable. Her friends had convinced her that comfortable relationships lead to men never proposing because they get all the benefits without the commitment. They'd researched articles about relationship psychology and found all these theories about creating urgency and scarcity to motivate commitment. Amber explained that they'd planned everything down to the smallest detail. The timing of the crisis to coincide with our lease renewal. The specific things Qley should say to make her doubts seem genuine. The social media strategy to make her look like she was thriving without me while still posting enough nostalgic content to keep me hoping. They'd even planned out which restaurants she should go to and what kind of activities she should post about to make her life look exciting and fulfilling. She went into detail about how they'd monitor my social media activity and adjust Qley's behavior based on how I responded to different triggers. When I seemed like I might be accepting the breakup, Qley would send a nostalgic text to reel me back in. When I seemed too hopeful, she'd post something about embracing independence to make me panic again. They'd track my likes, comments, and story views like I was some kind of lab rat in their experiment. Amber was actually apologizing for how well their psychological experiment had worked. She said they'd been amazed at how easily they could manipulate my emotions and keep me in this state of anxious uncertainty. They'd made bets about which tactics would work best and celebrated when I'd respond exactly as they'd predicted. They thought it was fascinating how predictable male psychology was. The whole thing was a calculated psychological manipulation designed to break me down emotionally and make me so desperate to keep Qley that I'd propose immediately when she decided she was ready to get back together. They'd planned to let it go on for exactly 1 month, and then Qley would have this dramatic realization that she couldn't live without me and come running back, expecting me to be so grateful that I'd propose on the spot. I hung up on Amber and just sat in Jake's living room for about 2 hours, feeling like I was going to be sick. Every emotion I'd felt over the past 3 weeks, the anxiety, the self-doubt, the fear of losing her, the sleepless nights wondering what I'd done wrong, had been completely manufactured for their entertainment. They'd turned my genuine love for Qley into a social experiment and treated my emotional pain like it was a game they were winning. The next evening, Qley came by Jake's place to check on me and see how I was handling the separation. She brought me homemade cookies and had this concerned, caring expression that I now realized was completely fake. She was probably coming to start phase 2 of their plan, where she'd begin showing signs of missing me. I confronted her immediately with what Amber had told me. Her face went completely white, and she started stammering, trying to deny it at first. But when I repeated back specific details that Amber had shared about their planning process, including direct quotes from their group chat and specifics about their monitoring system, she broke down and admitted everything. The tears started flowing immediately, but this time I wasn't buying the performance. She said the whole thing had started as a simple plan to motivate me toward engagement, but had gotten more complicated than she'd intended. She tried to downplay it as just some innocent girl talk that got out of hand, like they'd been planning a surprise party instead of psychological warfare. She explained that her friends had convinced her that our relationship was stagnant and that I was taking her for granted. They'd told her that men need to be reminded of what they could lose in order to appreciate what they have. The fake breakup was supposed to create urgency and make me realize I needed to propose before I lost her. She claimed they'd shown her all these articles about relationship psychology that proved their strategy would work. She apologized over and over, saying she never meant for it to go on so long or cause me so much pain. She claimed she'd been planning to end the charade soon, because the break had made her realize how much she actually loved me and wanted to be with me. She said watching me suffer had been harder than she'd expected, and she'd told her friends multiple times that she wanted to call it off. But then she started trying to manipulate me again, right there in the moment. She said that if I really loved her, I'd be able to forgive one mistake, and that my reaction was proving that maybe her friends were right about me not being truly committed to our future. She suggested that the fact I was so angry showed I didn't really understand her or care about her emotional needs. She argued that the plan had actually worked because it had shown how much I cared about her, and that we could use this experience to make our relationship stronger. She said that now we both knew how much we meant to each other, and we could move forward with that knowledge. She tried to frame it as some kind of relationship breakthrough that would ultimately benefit us both. This attempt to turn the situation around and make me the problem made me angrier than anything else she'd done. I told her that instead of making me want to propose, she'd accomplished the exact opposite. I couldn't marry someone who thought psychological manipulation was an acceptable relationship strategy, especially someone who could watch me suffer while knowing it was all fake. I explained that what bothered me most wasn't just the deception itself, but the fact that she'd watched me suffer for 3 weeks while knowing it was all fake. She'd seen me lose weight, struggle at work, and agonize over our future while she was out having fun with her friends, treating my emotions like entertainment. She'd looked me in the eye multiple times during those 3 weeks and pretended to be going through a crisis while knowing she was putting me through hell for her own benefit. When she cried about feeling trapped in our routine, she was acting. When she talked about needing space to find herself, she was following a script. When she said she wasn't sure if she loved me anymore, she was deliberately trying to hurt me to get the reaction her friends wanted. Every tear, every moment of supposed vulnerability, every expression of love and regret had been calculated for maximum emotional impact. I thought about all the sleepless nights I'd spent wondering what I'd done wrong in our relationship, all the self-doubt about whether I was good enough for her, all the anxiety about our future together. She'd put me through all of that while knowing it was completely manufactured. She'd watched me question everything about myself and our relationship while she was out posting Instagram photos at art galleries. Qley kept begging and promising she'd never listen to her friends again. She suggested couples therapy to work through the trust issues. She said she'd do anything to fix this and rebuild what we had. She even offered to cut contact with her friends completely and move somewhere new, where we could start fresh. She was pulling out every manipulation tactic she could think of, but I was done. I told her that the trust between us was completely destroyed and that I couldn't build a life with someone who was capable of that level of deception and manipulation. How could I ever believe anything she said again? How could I trust that any future crisis or problem in our relationship was real and not just another test? She kept crying and saying she loved me, but I explained that love doesn't involve deliberately causing your partner emotional pain for your own benefit. Real love involves honest communication, not psychological games designed to manipulate someone into proposing. What she'd done wasn't love. It was narcissistic abuse disguised as relationship strategy. I told her she'd gotten her wish for space, permanently. Within 2 weeks, I'd found my own apartment, a nice one-bedroom place for $1,100 a month in a completely different part of town. Starting fresh somewhere with no memories of Qley felt incredibly liberating. Qley kept trying to contact me, but I blocked her everywhere after desperate attempts that included calling from different numbers, showing up at my workplace, and even having her mother call to plead her case. Her mom left a voicemail about how Qley was just a young girl who made a mistake. The apple didn't fall far from the tree in terms of manipulation tactics. Her friends tried reaching out with pathetic excuses. Amber claimed they were just trying to help Qley. Tessa said I was overreacting because all relationships involve strategy, and Morgan actually suggested their plan worked because it proved how much I cared. They completely missed that it had proven Qley was capable of systematic emotional abuse. This experience taught me to be more selective about who I trusted. I'd been so focused on being a good boyfriend, son, and brother that I hadn't noticed being surrounded by people who only valued me for what I could provide. I threw myself into work with new intensity and started thinking bigger picture. The manipulation experience had actually taught me valuable skills about reading people's motivations, making me a sharper negotiator and better judge of character in business relationships. Within 6 months, I'd opened Thompson Commercial Properties. The first year was tough at $73,000, but by year 2, I was making $140,000. And by year 3, $180,000 with 2 agents working under me. Meanwhile, Qley's life imploded. She moved back with her parents after losing her marketing job, facing daily arguments and family pressure about throwing away a good man. Her manipulative friend group completely dissolved after their fight, with everyone blaming each other for how badly their plan backfired. I wasn't paying attention to their drama. I was too busy building my business and enjoying freedom from toxic people. Fast forward to now, my life had completely transformed. Thompson Commercial Properties was crushing it. I was making about $280,000 a year and had expanded to a team of 5 agents working under me. I'd bought a house in a nice neighborhood for $340,000 and was driving a BMW 540 AG. Nothing too flashy, but nice enough to show I'd made it. More importantly, I was engaged to an incredible woman named Sarah who's a successful real estate attorney. Life was really, really good. Then the desperate messages started coming. It began with a LinkedIn message from Qley. I'd blocked her everywhere else, saying she'd heard about my business success through mutual connections and wanted to congratulate me. She said she'd always known I was capable of great things and was proud to see me doing so well. The message was clearly calculated to seem supportive and friendly while opening the door for further contact. I ignored it, but she kept escalating. She found my business email and sent a message asking if we could grab coffee to catch up as friends. When I didn't respond, she got more direct. She started sending longer emails talking about how much she'd grown as a person and how sorry she was about how things ended between us. Turns out, Qley's life had not improved over the past 2 years. After getting laid off from her marketing job, she'd struggled to find anything that paid decent money. The job market in her field was competitive, and her skills had gotten stale during the time she'd spent focusing on our relationship drama instead of professional development. She'd been working a series of temporary positions and part-time gigs, making maybe $25,000 a year if she was lucky. Living with her parents had become increasingly difficult. They were constantly on her case about throwing away her relationship with me and comparing her to their friends' daughters, who were getting married and buying houses. The pressure and criticism were wearing her down, and according to what I heard through the grapevine, she was basically being treated like a failure who'd ruined her own life through poor choices. She'd blown through her savings during the periods of unemployment and had accumulated over $8,000 in credit card debt. Her car had been repossessed after she missed several payments, and she was taking the bus or borrowing her parents' car to get around. The contrast between her current situation and the successful life she'd walked away from was apparently eating her alive. But here's where it gets really good. Through our mutual network, she'd heard that I was doing well enough to hire people, and she was desperate for me to give her a job. Any job. The woman who'd psychologically tortured me for entertainment was now begging me for employment. She sent this pathetic email explaining how sorry she was for everything that had happened between us and how she'd learned and grown from the experience. She said she'd be grateful for any opportunity to work for Thompson Commercial Properties, even in an entry-level administrative position. The email was clearly written and rewritten multiple times, with every word calculated to seem humble and apologetic while also highlighting her qualifications. The email went into painful detail about her financial struggles and how her parents were threatening to kick her out if she didn't get her act together soon. She said she'd been thinking about me constantly and realized that losing me was the biggest mistake of her life, not just romantically, but professionally, since I clearly had the business acumen she'd never recognized. She was basically admitting that she destroyed her own life by destroying our relationship. Then her former accomplices started reaching out too. Amber sent me a Facebook message asking if my company needed any freelance marketing help because she was struggling to pay her bills with part-time retail work. She tried to act like we were old friends who just lost touch, completely ignoring the fact that she'd helped orchestrate my emotional torture. The audacity was breathtaking. Tessa reached out asking if I had any administrative openings because she was desperate for steady income with benefits. She'd apparently been hopping between temp jobs and was tired of not having health insurance or paid time off. She tried to present herself as someone who'd always believed in my potential and had just been caught up in drama that wasn't her fault. But Morgan took the cake. She actually sent me a message asking if I wanted to go on a date, saying she'd always thought I was amazing and had been waiting for the right time to express her interest. The audacity was incredible. The woman who'd helped plan my psychological breakdown was now trying to position herself as a romantic option, like I was supposed to be flattered by her attention. The desperation was obvious, and honestly, pretty satisfying to witness. These women who'd thought it was hilarious to mess with my emotions were now scrambling to get into my good graces because I was successful and they were all struggling. They'd all assumed that their manipulation would work and that I'd be so grateful to get Qley back that I'd propose immediately, and they could all benefit from my success through their connection to her. My family's reaction was predictably awful too. When word got around about my business success, they suddenly started calling regularly again. My mom suggested I should forgive and forget with Qley because successful men need good women by their sides. She completely ignored the fact that Qley had proven she wasn't a good woman by any reasonable definition. My dad pitched me his latest get-rich-quick scheme and said Qley could help me network with her family's wealthy connections, like that had ever been something I was interested in. My sister asked if I could co-sign a loan for her since I was rolling in money now, and then suggested that getting back together with Qley would be good for my image as a stable businessman. But here's the thing. I'd learned my lesson about letting toxic people back into my life. I responded to Qley's job inquiry with a professional email explaining that while I appreciated her interest in Thompson commercial properties, I didn't think it would be appropriate to have a working relationship given our history. I wished her luck in her job search and suggested she explore other opportunities in the area. The email was polite but firm, with no opening for further negotiation or discussion. To her manipulative friends, I didn't respond at all. They didn't deserve the courtesy of a response, and engaging with them would only open the door for more manipulation attempts. To my family, I made it crystal clear that my business success didn't mean I was going to become their personal bank, and that their sudden renewed interest in my life was transparently self-serving. I told them that if they wanted a relationship with me, it needed to be based on genuine care and respect, not financial opportunism. The best part is that word traveled fast through our mutual social circle about how well I was doing, and how professionally I'd handled their desperate attempts to reconnect. People started reaching out to me for business opportunities and networking connections, while the reputation of Qley and her former friends had taken a hit when word got around about their manipulation scheme. Last I heard through the grapevine, Qley was still living with her parents and working part-time at a clothing store in the mall, making barely above minimum wage. Amber had moved back to her hometown because she couldn't afford to live in our city anymore and was working at her uncle's insurance office. Tessa was working at a call center, making minimum wage and still bitter about her divorce, constantly posting angry rants on social media about how unfair life was. Morgan was dating some guy who treated her poorly, but had money, so she was putting up with emotional abuse for financial security. The irony was not lost on me.